Bonjour, everybody. Hi. Good morning. This is Neshi at Star Nation's organization's main fan page. I always want to say magazine or radio network, which is all true, but this is the main fan page for the Star Nation's organization. And it is Friday morning, June 22nd, the day after the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere and the winter solstice in the southern hemisphere. Welcome to Star Nations Academy. This is where I am broadcasting from this morning and every morning practically. And we have a gorgeous day here in Toma, Wisconsin. Yay, the sun is out. We haven't really seen much of the sun for about 4 days. Was raining practically nonstop. Not quite biblical sense, but it was pretty hard rain sometimes and thunder and for 4 days. So good morning, Elise and Rochelle. Thank you for joining me this morning. Got my tea this morning in one of my favorite mugs, the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. I like the color. And if I could try to find how we can do the Star Nations logo on a Yeti mug, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Hey, Mary S. And I know Mary Ann's probably with us too, right? Is that right? Good morning, Mary Ann. So this morning, it was a different kind of morning a little bit. Mom is in some pain as usual. It's nothing, it's always there, and it's really a matter of what degree, right? But she was having a much better morning than she was yesterday. And so we spent some time chatting when she was finished with breakfast and having a discussion about being clairvoyant. She doesn't use that word. But, she says, well, I see things. And so we were talking about that. And she says, I just don't understand why I have this. Why give it to me? What do I do with it? And so we talked about when she realized she was seeing things that maybe other people weren't seeing. And she said she was quite young. And she said she learned very quickly that even though my grandparents were leaders in their traditional Native American religions, they believed her, but her siblings always didn't. And so she said she learned quite quickly not to say anything. And so she basically kept seeing things, but never would talk about it. She would talk about it to her dad, to my Misho, and so he could help her with some things, but she never really said anything. And so she's lived most of her life not embracing that gift. And so we talked about that this morning. And I said, Mom, when you can actually claim it and say, I have this ability, I said, the rest of us are going to feel so much better, because when we have it and you're not claiming it, it kind of goes down your lineage, And I said, you have great grandchildren who we know have the ability to see. And don't you want them to have a little bit easier time with their clear sight than you did? And so we talked about that. It was a fascinating discussion and chat and learning stuff about I thought I knew her really well, but learning about a facet of her that she kept hidden a good portion of her life. And yeah, that, and that makes me think about our community here at Star Nations and how many people are aware of their clairs and how they bring in energy and information from spirit. And I think it's such a blessing that we have this, that we're able to have conversations with people about spirit and what we see, what we sense. And people don't think we're crazy, at least not in this community. I think it's a true blessing. And so I want to thank everybody out there who are part of Star Nation's community and those who will be joining us, that we have a place that we can have these kind of conversations, and hone our skills, polish them up. When we pick them up for the first time and claim them, I know, I went through the same thing, is that sometimes it makes us nervous. We're not quite sure how to use it. We're not quite sure what other people might think about us and that kind of thing. But as time moves forward and you have a community, you have a group of people, your peeps, that we can relax a little bit about it and have conversations and share things and ask for assistance, when we're not doing well, can send me some good energy my way, kind of thing. So I think it's a true blessing. Good morning, Mary Ellen. I'm so glad you're here with us. All right, so tea this morning, not coffee, because we had a little bit longer conversation. Coffee was flowing this morning with my mom and I. So I've got tea. Yum. I like it. So this morning's card draw, so appropriate. So appropriate. Now, this is the Shaman's death, meaning death and rebirth. Look at that artwork on this. If it focuses my camera. And so, it's very subtle, but the colors of the medicine wheel are still in this image. Shaman's death, death and rebirth. We got this card early in May. Early in May. And when you first get the card, you wonder, is this really talking about the physical death, right? And in some respects, I think Jamie Sams is talking about the physical death, because I reread the information that she wrote about it with that card this morning. And when I was connecting with my spiritual team, asking for clarity around that card, since we've had it before, what is it about this particular card that is important for us to know about today? The essence of this card, and how it could affect our day, the energy of the day, and how can we use the information that's being given in a good way, right? Using it in a good way. And Jamie says about this card is that the idea of death as a means to experiencing new life is a common belief. And, we talk about in many, many different traditions and beliefs across the world, across Grandmother Earth, there is this element about the death and rebirth. You think about the Egyptian, right? That's what my mind goes to, the death and rebirth. And it isn't necessarily a physical death, although it could be a near-death experience that is revealing for those people who have chosen the shamanic path, the medicine path as their experience here on Earth. And it could be a physical near-death experience. It helps us to see past the veil. It helps us to understand that our spirit, our soul is immortal, and that even though our physical body may not be, because it's organic and it's going to break down and return to grandmother, right? But our spirit and our soul is immortal and will go on. And some people, I used to really talk about past lives a lot early in my career, early in my teaching career. And I'm really embracing that it's not necessarily past, present, future. Because I've had this thing about the measurement of time, and it's a man-made or a person-made contraption. that the lives that our soul experiences is really parallel lives rather than past, present, and future, because I truly believe that it's more of a spiral than it is a linear time. And so when we're talking about the experience coming from death and the rebirth, it, in the physical sense, it's our soul that is doing the experiencing, right? And so we get to keep experiencing until we totally go back to Creator and not have to do the physical existence anymore. So, hey, Jill Conrad. Jill joined us too. Good morning. Good morning, ladies. Here, this is the card we got this morning. Shaman's death and rebirth. And as usual, there's many different meanings to this card because we have to talk about it in all four bodies, right? And we're talking about the physical, we'll talk about the spiritual, the mental, and the emotional. The way that Jamie writes about this card, it's also about facing our shadow selves. And there's many facets to us, right? Many facets. And even in our shadow self, there's many facets to our shadow self. And she says that one of the shaman's deaths is to face your fears within your shadow self. And that those on the shamanic path have the desire to do that, to go into that depth of our own darkness, to face it and to face those fears, and to release those fears once we learn what we need to learn from them, right? And so if we're talking about the shaman's death and facing our fears, we have to face those fears at every level. And I'm sure you guys that there are people that if not yourself, that there is an element of fear around just the word death itself. We experience it in so many ways, not just our own, but those people and beings around us. In the physical sense, a death of a loved one or a beloved, right? Usually brings us to such a place of grief and sometimes the broken heart, right? Many times it's the broken heart. And Jamie says that when we face our fears, that we border on the edge of insanity, and that those who walk the shaman's path or the medicine path have touched that in facing their darkness, their shadow self. And when I sat with that for a little bit this morning, I was thinking, I have to say I kind of agree with that, because this last one that I went through, it was pretty hard. It was the most challenged I've ever been. And there were times, there were days when I thought, I can't take this anymore. I can't. I've done everything I can that I know how to do to remedy this, to make this better. Everything but surrender. And because I was resisting it, it made it worse. And so that was my lesson in facing those fears. And when we say we lose a beloved, when they cross over and they're no longer physically here, the grief can be so deep and so strong that you don't want to be here, right? Yeah. I've watched it. I watched it in both my mom and my mother-in-law when their husbands, their spouses transitioned. I know friends, same thing. So I think the physicality part of facing our fears and being on the edge we talk about that. We realize that much more than the others, than the other. In my world, we call it the mini death or the little death, the shamanic death, because there's many. There's many. When we face our fears, we face it in all our bodies, and I think personally, just my experience, the emotional one is the most challenging. Facing your shadow self in your emotions, and how it plays out in your behavior, because we certainly are not perfect, right? And so I think that's, for me, that was the most challenging, because I am a triple fire. And learning how, one, that is a gift, but also when I face my shadow self, because of that fire, sometimes it can be pretty intense. and so when we face those facets of ourselves in the shadow, I think that's when we need the most help from our spiritual team and from those who are part of our inner circle, right? Yeah. Jill is saying, yes, I forget to surrender frequently. I know. I think it's because we have the word surrender, especially in the Western culture, we have a certain connotation to it. It's the giving up, and we see it as losing rather than winning, in the surrender. And how many quotes are there about, was it Winston Churchill, never give up, never surrender? Yeah. Sometimes it's a good thing to have that tenacity, to see something through, but other times it's more of a hindrance. And when we're facing our shadow self in its different forms, I think the tenacity is hanging on to the light, your inner sun, when you're doing this, so that you can cast that light into your own shadow, right? And see it for what it really is. We talk about that with the clarity, that clarity that we're all looking for. Again, so that word surrender sometimes will turn people the other direction. There's another one. I'm no loser. There's this thing about being, and rightfully so in some respects, being a winner. But what does that mean? That means there's a lot of competition usually in it, which is based in the ego. And the ego is the one that really doesn't want to surrender. Really, really doesn't. And you have to be to the point of exhaustion of all kinds, physical, emotional, mental exhaustion, before the ego is willing to be balanced. And maybe that's not even putting it correctly, because when the ego is out of balance, there's no willingness on that part, because you want to be right. You have to be right. You'll do anything to be right, include losing good friendships, because you're determined that you have to be right. Competition. Yep. And Jill is saying, and because we're healers, supposed to make it better. Yeah. But isn't that part of the ego? So sometimes the death, the shaman's death is, for me anyway, understanding it now after 2017, is about balancing out the ego. We still need it. Still a part of us, is still part of our whole, the whole person, the whole being. But when the ego is out of balance, maybe that's why we get to face our shadows, our shadow parts, because it's about balancing out the ego. Yeah. And Jill, you're right. There's healers who believe that it's that perception that they can handle it all, and they don't want to show the weakness. And the weakness is there when you are facing your shadow self. Yep, there's that weakness. Can't cover it up. Can't hide it. It's gonna show itself somehow, right? And so I think that my belief is that the ego is, when it's out of balance, it's actually, maybe it's a blessing in a way, because we have to face our shadow selves. Because when our soul is leading, trying to lead and taking us in a certain direction, and our ego doesn't want to go in that direction, doesn't want to give up what kind of life that we've built, right? Doesn't want to give us anything up. And so the soul is heading in one direction, the ego wants to go in the opposite direction. And so what do you have? You have this tension, this anxiety, this unrest, right? So maybe, in the long run, if the ego was always in balance, we wouldn't necessarily be learning stuff. Oh my gosh, light bulb. If the ego is constantly in balance, we wouldn't have those moments of soul growth, those aha moments, right? Okay, what is the balancing ego? 20 words or less. Okay, balancing of the ego. For me it was, it wasn't always being right. And the competition thing that, doesn't exist really. It's only in the mind. When you think about competition and ego, there's always winners and there's always losers. There's no equality. So when you're balancing the ego, yeah, we talked about that yesterday with the talking stick. Everyone's opinion is sacred, even when you disagree. Being a two-legged on planet Earth, on Grandmother Earth, is not for the faint of heart. It's not for people who are wimpy. I don't consider anybody in physical form going through the experiences that they've chosen to experience here on Earth as wimpy. No way. Not one of us. Nope. Because at our core, we have to be brave. We have to have courage to face ourselves. Courage to face ourselves. Hey, Pamista. Pam's here. Pam from Alaska. Elise, Buzz, you lose more than 20 words. I know. Hey, I know. I don't think I could do it in 20 words. I'll have to practice that. That's kind of like your elevator speech, when you talk about marketing in 3 minutes or less to explain what your business is and your mission and blah, blah, blah. Your elevator speech. I'll have to practice that. Oh my gosh. Hi, Stephanie. Good morning to you. So this is our card that was drawn today. Shaman's death and rebirth. And if you take a look at the image, if you look at the face, what do you see? It kind of reminds me of a Rorschach, but there's images of bats on his face. Bats, B-A-T-S, bats. And that is Jamie Sams is drawing on her experience with medicine people from Mexico, the Yaqui, and they have a belief about the bat that it's about death and rebirth. It's about when they go into the caves and they sleep during the day, right? And they're out at night. So for them, the bat is a symbol, a power animal, if you will, about death and rebirth. We were just talking about how Jamie Sams talks about the shaman's death. In one aspect, she does talk about near-death experiences and how when you go through something like that and you survive it, that you come back and you have this different perspective of the earth plane, and that you have seen beyond the veil, right? Yeah. Hey, Allie, good morning to you, or wherever you're at. It's morning here. Could be afternoon by you. So, Elise, okay, and in 20 words or less, why is this a non-show? Because when I first started, it was, oh, stop. I don't know who's trying to call me, but that's rude. In 20 words or less, when I first started this, it was an experiment because I have to find out how things work before I pass it on to the other hosts, make decisions from it. And this was an experiment. I wanted to share something that was relevant, but also would give me an insight into Facebook. That's why it's a non-show. Should we turn it into a show? Thing is that when I turn it into a show, then there's all the marketing piece that goes with it. Because I've been kicking around the idea, Elise, about let's see what it's like when we do word of mouth, when we do the word through sharing. Share it with one person that you know, that you feel that they might enjoy or want to be a part of the conversation. And if one person shares with one person and another person shares with another person, I think that that's how we did our spiritual roundtables in the physical sense. When I lived down in Poinet years ago, I didn't advertise it. It was word of mouth. And people would call me and say, can I come? Sure, you can come. The only thing that we ask is that if you're going to stay through lunch, that you bring a little something to share, and you bring your heart. That was it. And sometimes we would have 3 people, and sometimes we would have 15 or 20 people. And that was just word of mouth on a weekday morning. Weekday. And sometimes it was hard for people to get people to go home. They were there practically all day. It's like, okay, it's 3:00, everybody out. And we started at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. So that's why. And that was more than 20 words. Oh, and Stephanie is saying probably why Ben is so Ben. He died over a dozen times before he was a year old. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, Ben. The word sacred, whenever you and I connect, Stephanie, and Ben is in the conversation, the word that always gets whispered in my ear is sacred. Ben is sacred. He's a gift. Sacred. Yeah. Sweetheart. That little guy. That little man. He's not a little boy. He's a little man. I'm just trying to see what Jamie has to say about I started a couple of things. She says a shaman is a person who is willing to confront the greatest fears and shadows of the physical life. I agree. I totally agree. She also says that the shaman is trained in dealing with any type of black arts. Yep. That's also true. even when you're trying to ignore it. Even when you say, I'm not doing that, not going there, it comes up. And your gifts are requested. And so in order to be of service, because that's what we're here to do, yeah, you travel in the darkness, literally, to face the darkness. She also says, if the would-be shaman does not have the ability to look at his own or her shadow side, this person is not meant to follow the path of the shaman. Why is that? If you can't look at your own shadows and your own darkness, how can you face something else's darkness? Can't. When we say that in training, when we say that you have to go in fearless, because if you go in with fear, it is going to eat you up and spit you out. And so you go through what it's like to be fearless. And what does that mean? That means that love is much stronger. That means that when someone is or something is behaving in a cruel or dark way, that you also realize that they are still from the Creator. They still have a spark of the Creator within them. And then you do what you have to do for them to go to be reunited to the Creator. Yeah, that's what it means to go in fearless. That the love within you is much bigger than the fear. Mm-hmm. Not an easy task sometimes. So Stephanie is saying fear is the mind killer. Yes, the mantra keeps playing through my mind. Yes, it is. A lot of that is attached to the ego. It is. We were just talking about the ego. I had a light bulb moment. It was like, oh my gosh. Okay, so when our ego is out of balance and wanting to go in the opposite direction of where our soul is taking us, and that's where our soul growth is. That's where our life lessons are, in trying to get the balance of the ego. We still need the ego. It's a part of us. It's not separate from us. When you see yourself as a whole being, then the ego is a part of that whole. Yeah. Reminds me of other things too. Being Native American. And when you say who's Native American, who's not, there is this thing about enrollment. And when you're enrolled into a certain nation, they have bylaws about what constitutes a tribal member. And that goes to your lineage. That goes to blood quantum. That goes to, I am, let me do the math. I am a quarter, no, I'm 1/8 French Canadian. I am half Yaqui. I am a quarter Potawatomi, and I'm also a quarter Ho-Chunk. All right, so we look and talk about ourselves in fractions. In fractions. That's not healthy. No. So when we consider who our whole being, it includes our physical self, our ego self. It includes our inner child and our higher self. They're not separate. They're part of the whole. They are the whole being. Mm-hmm. Okay, so box. So what time is it? All right. So Jamie Sams writes that true medicine people do not have to announce or brag that they are shamans or medicine people at all. They work quietly and with humility because they know their worth in the eyes of the great mystery. The opinions of others don't change the sense of self held by a true healer or shaman. The shaman has walked up to the gates of his or her personal hell and then walked in. Yeah, the quality that always shines in a true shaman is compassion for the paths that the others must walk. I thought that was a really good way of putting it that Jamie wrote. Because you and I both know that there are people out there who say they are one thing and they're not. You know, and that's where our discernment comes in, right? Discerning. Yeah. It always reminds me of, Ray, what was his name? He's the guy that did the sweat lodge out in, was it Arizona, that people died. He was a part of The Secret. He was part of that original video with The Secret. I used to know his name like that, but anyway, he took the essence of the sweat lodge, or tried to replicate it without being trained. Had a sweat lodge that was pretty large. People paid $10,000 to be there, and some people died. Yep. He went to prison for a while. He was convicted. And he's not supposed to be doing, any kind of medicine work anymore, spiritual work, but he is under the table. He hasn't learned anything, I guess. I don't know. That's a judgment. It's a judgment. But, taking something that is sacred, a ceremony that's sacred, because not everybody can pour a lodge. You have to be trained in that to be able to hold the sacred space for the people within that lodge that are going through the sweat lodge. It's not a commercialized thing. And so that, that's a huge difference. And so that is that's probably the most blatant example of someone who thought he could walk a medicine path in a fake way. Yeah. Stephanie says, I'll have to listen to the replay. Yeah. Yeah. We love our replays. We do, the recordings. Let's see. She says that she's talking about the natural shaman, which I thought was interesting, because I never really know what to call myself, because I'm not trained in the Harner method, Michael Harner, and the Way of the Shaman. I've read the books and stuff, and I went to Sandra Ingerman's, one of her classes, because I wanted to experience her as a teacher. But my training comes from my grandfather and my mom, really. And so, I don't have a little piece of paper that says you are a shaman. And that's not even our word. You know how I feel about the word shaman. I've said it now how many times. It's not an indigenous word to this continent. It comes from the Sami in their indigenous language. And so, in our language, it translates to holy person or medicine person, the medicine being from spirit, and so she says that the natural shaman has usually had one or more major traumas between the ages of 1 and 7. Kind of reminds me of Ben. Stephanie, between 1 and 7. These traumatic events can cause a tear in the embryonic ego matrix that destroys the boundaries of the child. Yeah. And so in the old days, in the ancient days, our ancestors, what they would do would be they would, and usually it was the holy person that would teach the child how to discern between the information they were getting, what was coming from love and for the support of that child, and what wasn't. In other words, earthbound negative beings, right, interfering. And so the shaman or the holy person would help the child to help discern between what was a good medicine and what was a bad medicine. And so the holy person would work with that child, almost as if training, because they were being trained to be able to discern for themselves between the good and the bad medicine. Okay. She says the child is taught how to eliminate the bad influences and accept the good influences that will lead to an adulthood as a gifted shaman. She says the finest shamans in our world today are those healers who have walked the path of death and rebirth, destroying the shadows that have blocked their inner clarity. When a shaman can recognize the shadow inside the self, diagnosing similar darknesses in others is possible. But she also says, we have to look at it. Why this card today? What does the essence of this card mean for us today? I think it goes to the feeling I got when I was having a conversation with my spiritual team, is that it goes to facing our own shadow selves. I mean, we've heard it how many times in different ways. But in order to recognize how we can help someone else and have that compassion for them, and also whenever we heal ourselves, we also do the healing for our ancestors and our descendants, right? And so it's important to be able to face our own shadow aspects, the facets of ourselves, in that darkness. Yeah. So Jill is saying several of the people from The Secret either died, went to jail, or had other catastrophes. That's true. I think that says something about being out of balance, even though as so many follow that program, I missed a bunch of discussion and good stuff. Well, thank you. You're absolutely right about the people in The Secret. But did you know that the original video of The Secret included the Hickses, Abraham? And in order for the book to be a wide success, I don't know if it was the publishers or the marketing people, or what they did was they changed the focus of The Secret to more of a monetary, materialist aspect. And when the Hickses saw the edited version of the original video, the raw video, they broke their contract. They were not in the video. They took them out. That's integrity. Because that is not what was brought to them to be a part of. Because the law of attraction is so much bigger than what was portrayed in The Secret. That's why The Secret didn't work for a lot of people, is because they didn't really address the emotional component to it. Because the emotions is the fuel that literally catapults your desire your what you're trying to attract into the physical world. And then it's our responsibility to ground it to the earth plane. In other words, we have to have action behind it to ground it to the earth plane. They don't talk about that. They don't. Good morning, Connie. Good morning. And Jill is saying, no, didn't know that. More bad woo-woo. Yes, it is. And Jill saying, Harner doesn't promote the use of word shaman. Those who finish his highest course are called the certified shamanic counselors. Yeah, actually, Michael Harner, I think what he actually did, which was a gift, was to bring the work of medicine people into the present moment so that it could survive. Because of all, the stuff that happened to Indigenous people all over the world, that there was aspects of their traditional life that was either dying out because of the loss of the language and culture, and or because it was prohibited by a government. And so through his work, he pulled much of that kind of information together and offered it to the world, wrapped a little bit differently. And so, yeah, I think it was a huge gift. And I know that in his early books, he talked about the word shaman and where that derived from. But I think there we go. We're going to go back to marketing for the sales. Is that the word shaman became like the word Kleenex. Kleenex is a brand. It's not a type, it's a tissue, right? And so shaman became kind of a generic kind of term that carried across, right? And the only reason why I find it uncomfortable to use that word is because there's words in my own language that I don't know how to pronounce. I need to get with an elder to get the correct pronunciation of them. Yeah, but that's on me. That's my stuff. I'll get there. I'm a work in progress. All right, so the application of today's card. Jamie Sams writes that you're being put on notice that the death cycle or ending is in process. Okay. Before the birth can occur, the habit, attitude, relationship, or part of the self that is dying must be looked at. Assist the process by consciously allowing the old to be removed, let go, and then make way for the new cycle of life can take hold. She says the rebirth cycle is always full of promise and growth when you allow the old patterns to die with dignity. I like that. When you allow them to die with dignity. And then we go back to the mental mind surrendering, letting go. And let me tell you, every time I've had those initiations, and because there is a part of you that it's that mental aspect that's part of the ego that wants to hang on to the old, wants to hold on to it because there's a control issue there, right? And then when you surrender and just let go, you can feel how the energy just starts to flow again. And I'm not saying immediately, but within a time frame, you can see with some clarity about, oh, that's why that happened. Or, oh, that's how come I had to do that. I didn't realize that at the time. And start connecting the dots to see with some clarity about what spirit was already there trying to show me, and I was in resistance. And I let go. That was in October. Just so you know, that was in October. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Jill is saying, yes, he did an amazing thing, talking about Michael Harner. One doesn't name oneself shaman. Nope. I see it only as a conferred title from a community if that community has that concept. Right. Exactly. Exactly. And even then, I was just thinking, how people in my native community, how they talk about people who have certain gifts. Yeah. But they're also the ones that get called. They get called for, to help out with certain things. And yeah. So it is based on the community for sure. Uh-oh. Stephanie is saying her phone is on the fritz. Uh-oh. So stop it, everyone. All right, you know how I feel about Jamie Sam's poems. She is a good poet. So here's the poem about the shaman's death, okay? Here we go. Grandfather, I do ask for death for the parts of me that will not hear or speak the truth, which are too blind to see. Grandmother, give me birth again, with love as my guide, truth and beauty as my path, with nothing left to hide. I like that. I'm going to read that grandmother one again, okay? She says, Grandmother, give me birth again, with love as my guide, truth and beauty as my path, with nothing left to hide. You have to admit, it takes a lot less energy to be the real you. A lot less energy of all kinds. when you are when there's nothing left to hide. I like it. So today's Friday, start of the weekend. I hope you guys have a good weekend planned. I saw, didn't they see Nicole Warner in the house? I thought he did. Yeah, Nicole. I'm wishing Nicole a restful weekend. She has been literally burning the candle on both ends and in the middle. I know the feeling of that. Nicole. And so I'm hoping that you have a peaceful weekend. Get some rest. Get some rest if you can. What do we get going here at Star Nations? Oh. Quickly before I let you guys go, is that I finally got 2 of the classes posted. That's coming up here in Wisconsin, here in this building. So the first one that is going to be happening is in September on the weekend of the 22nd. Minnie Kansman is going to be here with me, and we are teaching the magic of Hogwarts. It is a class that will help build the foundation for your gifts. And we're going to have things like the forest walk. Minnie's going to be doing forest therapy. She's also, I think that she's going to be doing part of the how to make a wand. And I'm going to do divination. We're going to do a little pendulum work and a little card work. But I'm also going to do the basics of a shamanic journey. We aren't going to be journeying for others, but the basics, the very basic. And we're going to be doing something that's called, what we do is we take a blank tile, like a bathroom tile, and we use watercolor, and we make a divination tile from it. It's similar to reading a stone, but you're actually putting your energy into it. And we're going to be making a medicine pouch. So that's the weekend of September 22nd. It's all over Facebook right now. You can see it right here on our main fan page, but you can also go to the website, starnations.org, and see the information there, more information. And then in October 6th and 7th, that first Saturday, Sunday, Polly Jo LeBay is going to be here in Wisconsin, here at the Academy, and she's teaching the Mystical Healing 101, and it is the essence of that class that is about the heart chakra, healing the heart chakra. And she's also offering private healing sessions on Friday and on Monday. And so all that information is at the website as well. And that will be the first time Polly Jo is going to be in Wisconsin to teach. Yay! Can't wait. Can't wait. I'm going to be lining up on August 11th. I need to get that out this weekend. I've been asked to do a shamanic journey weekend. For those people who may not have ever had their first shamanic journey to retrieve either a soul retrieval or a power animal retrieval. So yeah, that came out of the mini class that I did on the Academy closed group. People are asking. So we're going to do that. I think it's going to be August 11th, and it's going to be, we'll start like at 10 o'clock on Saturday and be done around noon on Sunday, so that those people who are driving have driving time built in. And so we'll be journeying all day Saturday and Sunday morning. Okay. All right. Let's see. I'm gonna scroll up a little bit here, make sure I get everybody's. All right, Stephanie, I just tuned in. Is it possible to get a card reading? Yeah, I don't do the individual card readings on this particular live stream. We're taking the card just for the day, Stephanie. If you want an individual card reading, I was gonna say I'll try to fit it in. I could possibly do that tomorrow or Sunday. But you know who's really, really good at it is Julie Hedges. Julie Hedges. She does really good work with the tarot. I'm asking my guides about this. Yeah, and Stephanie, I saw that you were doing surgery. Yeah, I think the better route would be Polly Jo, because she does a lot of work with medical stuff. And if to be able to get the kind of clarity that you're looking for, I think she might be a better route to go with this one. If this was life path kind of stuff, I'd be happy to help you. I'd say let's do it. But I have a feeling that it's around your medical stuff, and Polly Jo is really, really good at that. Thanks, Elise. I'm so glad you joined us. Hugs to you too. Yep. Stephanie says she's facing fear for having an operation on the 27th. Yes. So send Polly Jo a message, okay? And let her know that we had this discussion on the live stream this morning. And we'll see if she can fit you in. I know that she had stuff going on last night, but yeah, send her a private message, okay, Stephanie, and let me know how that goes. We'll try to get you some help somehow. And Jill is saying, this is so cool. Divination journey. Wow, Patch. Need an assistant? I do need an assistant. You wouldn't believe how much I need an assistant. Oh my gosh. Stephanie is saying having an operation on the 27th. Okay. You're very welcome, Mary Ellen. You have a good weekend too. And Stephanie, okay. Stephanie Williams say, hey, Stephanie, call me later today and we can talk about the surgery. Now she did the daily card drawing. It was a death. Okay. All right. Stephanie is talking to Stephanie. All right. And then Jill is, you're going to do amazing work. Oh, thank you, Jill. And Stephanie Williams, Julie Hedges is amazing tarot. Yes, she is. Yes, she is. But if it really is around your physical health, Polly Jo is her gifts lie in that. Healing the healer is her mission. And so yeah, and Julie is really good too, and she's done both tarot for me and also my astrology. Julie has. And when you're talking about life path kind of situations and how things are unfolding for the year, Julie is the one. She's the Mott's. Okay. I'm so glad you guys are with me today, this morning, for the card draw. We'll be meeting back here tomorrow morning and see what Spirit has to say to us through the cards tomorrow morning. Enjoy your Friday, and we'll see you in the morning, okay? Ba mamina, Padawanami for until we see each other again. Love you guys.